Now, Jeff, I was in the United States when the attack happened in Houston and Dallas in Texas, but I did read the New York Times the day afterwards, and I never saw so many semi-critical articles of Israel in the New York Times before. Then it emerged that one of the people who had been murdered was in fact a U.S. citizen. Can you summarize how this has all gone down amongst the U.S. political class and in the more serious parts of the U.S. media?
Yes, there is a phase shift. You said it earlier, or your friend who was on board the ship said it earlier quite eloquently. This is a phase shift. I had a meeting last week with a top American diplomat, a retired ambassador, and he drew the analogy to the murders in the 1960s of the three civil rights workers, Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner, in Mississippi. And he said, after that incident, nobody could dare support the position of Sheriff Bull Connor. And he said, this incident on an international scale will be the same as that. And he said, we're going to see a freedom summer on the high seas this year. So I think that we already had reached a point prior to this incident where a significant portion of the American political establishment, mainstream, if you will, had come to the conclusion that many of us have had for years, namely that Israel is becoming increasingly a liability, not an asset. Even people within the U.S. military, even General David Petraeus, the head of the Central Command, told the U.S. Senate several months ago that until there is a just solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict, the U.S. military presence throughout the entire Central Command region, which stretches from the Middle East all the way into Pakistan, Afghanistan, will be in jeopardy because people look at the United States and they say Israel is complicit with the crimes, or I'm sorry, the U.S. is complicit with the crimes of Israel. Now, I go back to the fact that several years ago, two leading American academics, Mearsheimer and Walt, from Chicago University and Harvard, published a book on the Israel lobby. And a few years back, anyone even attempting to say some of those things, like yourself and me and others, would have been cornered as hateful anti-Semites. But here, two American scholars with impeccable credentials not only published the article originally in the London Review of Books, but it was later published in the Middle East Policy Council Journal, a very prestigious journal, and then as a New York Times bestseller. All of this is an indication that there's been a sea change already underway. And so the mood shift had happened, and as the result of that, this incident has catalyzed something far greater, first in the American population, who are feeling a great deal of economic injustice already. You made the case about the level of anger at British Petroleum for the catastrophe in the Gulf. But I must say I have one great area of concern, which is that we are now in a congressional election year, a very important one, in which incumbents are terrified at the mood in the population. It's the most unpredictable it's been in my lifetime. And secondly, we have immediately after that the beginning of the presidential campaign. And my fear is that the AIPAC Zionist lobby crowd has delivered some unequivocal threats to the immediate circles around President Obama. And they've got Dennis Ross and Rahm Emanuel and Larry Summers right there at the White House who are willing receptacles for the threats coming from the Israeli lobby. And my fear is that the mood in the population, even perhaps the mood reflected in the major media, is not going to be fully reflected in action at the top from the president.
Jeff, that's an amazing report, and I thank you for it. And of course, the irony is that those civil rights campaign heroes you mentioned were Jews. And the Jews in South Africa were a central part of the anti-apartheid struggle in the African National Congress. Let's hope that American Jewry can rally back to the progressive side of politics and away from Zionism. Thank you, Jeff. We'll talk again soon, I'm sure. Now, I said earlier that US public opinion, and not just public opinion, the President is pretty hot under the collar about it, about the BP oil spill, which has devastated large swathes of the US coastline and also battered the company's share price. Not that the fishermen, tourists and workers in Louisiana give a fig about that. It's a subject I'll be returning to in the coming weeks. Well, the flotilla and its reverberations is something that we'll be concentrating on today in Fighting Talk. I think you better stay tuned.
Oh, just the way you move, it's a real deal. And the way you groove, oh, it's the way I feel it. You're a wild thing and you're a natural star. Got me crazy about the way you walk. So I want you, baby, you're the real deal.
Now, I deliver this Fighting Talk with a kind of cold anger. As I said earlier, I was one of the organizers of the Freedom Flotilla. The people that I helped to bury in their graves at mass funerals in Istanbul last week were friends of mine. Many of the wounded were also, and hundreds of those incarcerated in that prison camp that Jeff was talking about were my friends. It is an international scandal that in international waters an international aid flotilla was attacked by heavily armed commandos and a large number of international citizens were murdered. And premeditatedly, as Jeff has just, I think, established. It follows that only an international, independent inquiry into this scandal can be acceptable. The idea of Netanyahu and Mark Regev and their gang investigating something that they themselves carried out, and deliberately so, is risible. It is despicable as an idea. And if the world stands by and accepts it and does not insist on an international inquiry, well, we'll have to have one ourselves. And here's the first shot in it. The Emir of Qatar, one of the world's richest and most honorable men, has announced that he will pay for every single legal action against Israel mounted wherever in the world to obtain proper legal redress and compensation for this massive crime. I predict that the compensation will run into billions of dollars. At least 9 people murdered, maybe as many as 16 when the final accounting is done. The wounding of scores of people, the incarceration of hundreds, and the theft even of their clothes and virtually all of their possessions. It'll go to court, all right, I can assure you, Mr. Netanyahu, all over the world, and we will not leave you with any hiding place. We're coming after you in court, and we'll be back in the Mediterranean very soon. May you go in peace.
Just the way you move, it's a real deal. And the way you groove, oh, it's the way I feel it. You're a wild thing and you're a natural star. Got me crazy about the way you walk. So I want you, baby, you're the real deal.